What inspired you to transition from project management to mentoring? And was there a defining moment that led to the shift?
Honestly, I was not intentionally seeking out to transition into mentorship. I think when you transition into leadership, a portion of that comes with mentorship and coaching because now you're not so much in the day-to-day of crunching out numbers or, delivering projects.
Did you know that great leaders excel not just in managing projects, but also in empowering others through mentorship? Leadership isn't confined to the office or a job title. It's about guiding, inspiring, and making an impact in every situation. In this episode, I'm very lucky to be joined by Keisha Seals, Assistant Director of Public Works at the City of Sugar Land, to talk about transitioning from managing to mentoring and how to redefine leadership, skills that make mentorship impactful, and how it's shaping the future for women in engineering. I'm your host, Rebecca Swaby, and this is the Women in Engineering podcast. And with that, let's jump right into today's episode. Now it's time to jump right into the main segment of our episode. Today, I have with me Keisha Seals. Keisha, welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. So to start, can you tell me a bit about yourself and what brought you to your role as the Assistant Director of Public Works?
Sure. So I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in New York. I spent my teenage years in Michigan, and then I went to Michigan State University where I received my Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering. And then after that kind of spent off my career, and I spent many years in the private sector, and then I moved to Texas in 2006. So I would say my career at the City of Sugar Land, it was really destiny, I would say, because I actually would be remiss if I did not say that I owe my career in the City of Sugar Land to Pat Walsh, who was the former city planning director for Houston and also the transportation director for the City of Sugar Land. And rest in peace, he died in 2018. But Pat and I had a phone conversation. And at the end of that phone interview, Pat said, I need to fly you out here so we can spend the day together, see how this relationship is going to work and if this is going to work for both of us. And so he flew me out to Sugar Land. I spent the day with them. And at the end of the day, Pat said, what do I need to do to get you down here?
Oh, wow.
And the rest they say is history. And I say that it was destiny because out of all the engineers that, they could have selected here in Texas, they selected someone in Michigan. And I flew down here and then I went back home and then we drove down here in 2006 and I've been here for 18 years.
That is amazing. And you don't normally hear about engineers getting flown around the country for job interviews.
I know. Right. So I said again, it was definitely destiny. And, we had a great phone conversation and Pat was like, I really like you. And I was like, I really like you too, and just the relationship, the energy, the synergy,
And was
just
that
made
was that
great.
just off of an application? You just applied and
It was just off of an application and Pat called me and he said, I'm going to set up an interview with you. And we set up a phone interview. I think we stayed on the phone for about an hour. And again, he was like, I want to fly you down here, let's spend a day together. And we did. And
what do you think it was about your application that caught his attention?
I don't know. I'm a very authentic person. I'm a very transparent person. I don't know if it was, I was working in the private sector at that time. I was doing a lot of transportation engineering. And the good thing is that, I'm a transportation engineer and that's my expertise. It's so funny, but they were looking for a drainage engineer at the time, And so, transportation, you do a lot of drainage, but they were specifically looking for someone that could do modeling, things of that nature. And that wasn't me. That wasn't my background. But he flew me down anyway, wanted to meet with me anyway. And it's funny because the drainage engineer at the time that was hiring me to assist him He was very disappointed that I wasn't a drainage engineer, but he quickly understood why Pat wanted to hire me. And so it just worked out.
Usually we think about when hiring engineers, we're looking at the CVs, we're looking at the resumes, the hard technical skills, right? You want to make sure it's totally aligned with the job that you need. But it sounds like in
Exactly.
this case, he saw something else. What do you think
He
he
saw
saw?
something else. Well, here's the thing, when I first got down here, I quickly realized why Pat wanted me here because the first three projects that I worked on was the widening of US 90A, the widening of State Highway 6, including the overpass over 90A, and the widening of US 59. Those were
Pretty
the
major
first
projects.
three projects,
Yeah.
right. And so in my mind, I was like, what did I just get myself into? But Pat knew exactly what he was doing. He needed someone to champion those three huge major projects in the city of Sugar Land at the time where they were growing. The growth within Sugar Land was really happening around that time in 2006 to 2010, 11. And those projects were a great segue into Sugar Land, right?
Yeah.
They bisect Sugar Land in many different ways.
Yeah. And those being extremely major projects, what do you think the top two or three skills were that he was seeing in you that he thought, okay, I really trust this person to be guiding these projects that are so important for our region?
I mean, look, projects like that, you have to be able to be an effective communicator, right? At that point in time, I'm huge in organization. I need to stay organized. I always say I'm borderline OCD. I have to have everything structured and just my thoughts. I'm a note taker. And I believe in if I fail at something or if I miss something, I believe in telling it. I believe in not trying to shy away from it or passing that buck to someone else. No, I take ownership
Yeah.
in everything that I do. And I think that's what he heard in my interview. I think that's what he saw in my application. And he certainly saw that as I started progressing through the project management of those projects.
Okay, great. A lot of our listeners, they work in the private sector and they might be interested in what that process was like transitioning from working for a private firm into government. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yeah, I never knew that I was going to be in the public sector. Private is just kind of the direction that you go in as soon as you get out of school from engineering. And then I found myself kind of hopping around every 4 years, the first like 8 years, 8 to 10 years of my career. And I was like, this next job, I am going to stay there for at least 6 years, right? Like that was a goal for me. And so, again, wasn't really necessarily looking for a municipal job, but I was open to it. The transition for me it was actually really different because I was so used to having to have billable hours, right? And you got to crunch out projects so you can get more projects so you can have billable hours from the private side. And I remembered the first time I was doing my timesheet at the city of Sugar Land, and I told Pat, like, how do you want me to write my billable hours
Right.
down? Like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, I need to make sure that you know where my hours were being spent. And he's like, no, Keisha, we don't do that here. You don't have to do that. I was like, "Oh, wow, really?" So that was a huge transition for me because I was so used to having to document every little thing that I did. The one thing that I really did like about transitioning to municipal, the servitude, right? Having that servant leader ability to really go out and make an impact for the residents in the city of Sugar Land, even those that are just coming in and visiting, knowing that you have a great impact in what they do while they're in Sugar Land. That to me was a huge plus for me. It was a bonus for me.
Hmm. Okay. That's awesome. And this is a bit of a selfish question, but when you work at a private company and especially when you're a junior, you're thinking, I want exposure to clients. I want to work with clients. I want to get my name out there. Like, do you have any advice for especially younger engineers earlier in their career about how to approach the concept of business development with clients like yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, listening to what your clients want is huge, right? Sometimes we have like a template of what we say and what we give to a client that works for everybody. But then there's specific expertise that we are looking for because we may want to go in a different direction than we've never been before, and we need someone to help guide us and lead us in that direction. And so there are things that you must listen to that the client is saying that they need, and you have to have the ability to tell them, yes, I can meet that need, and also be honest when you can't meet that need, right? Because you definitely don't want to put yourself in a situation where you say you can do and you are not able to perform and deliver.
Yeah. So listening, authenticity, and capabilities. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. So what inspired you to transition from project management to mentoring? And was there a defining moment that led to the shift?
Y- Honestly, I was not intentionally seeking out to transition into mentorship. I think when you transition into leadership, a portion of that comes with mentorship and coaching, right? Because now you're not so much in the day to day of crunching out numbers or, delivering projects, but you are in the day to day of managing people, managing expectations, managing personalities, right? Managing things that are your staff and your team needs. And so the transition just came somewhat naturally because I transitioned into leadership. I started out as an engineer one, quickly received promotions to higher levels in the engineering department. And then I would say 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I had an opportunity where the assistant director position over at Public Works became available, and I was asked to step into that role as an interim. At that time, I took over facilities and fleet. Mind you, I am an engineer, so I had no understanding, nothing, no type of background in facilities or fleet. But what I did have was the background in project management, the background in people management, the background in change management. And I think those things, coupled with the fact that, I'm a people person, but again, going back to the authenticity and the transparency of who I am, that led me into being able to manage and transition into that position, but then also transitioning into mentoring.
Okay. Okay, that's awesome. And it sounds like it didn't take you that long to get up to speed with what you needed to do for fleet and facility management.
No, I would say it took some time,
Okay.
but we were in a place where, they needed more so than getting projects done. They needed someone to mentor them as a whole, right? Both the facilities and the fleet division. They needed someone to be able to champion for them and go and get funding for them, etc. And I was able to do that. And I learned a lot about fleet and facilities in the meantime. Fast forward to today, I'm now the streets division assistant director for public works. And so I transitioned from facilities and fleet, and I took over streets about a year and a half ago. And again, the same thing. And in my view, I do not mentor just my staff. I mentor people outside of public works. I mentor people that are not in engineering. And it's because people see something in you, right, as a leader,
Yeah.
that they say, okay, can you show me what you've done to be successful? Can you help me get
Yeah.
to where I want to be?
Yeah, that's great. And you said a great word there, championing. It sounds like that's important for the job, getting funding,
Yes.
but it's also important for the people that you work with in your department or beyond that. Maybe you can just talk a little bit more about, what does it take to be a good champion?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll go back to being an effective listener, communicator, right? I'm not one, not one to take no for an answer.
Okay.
When I'm told no, I'm like, okay, how can I go back, say it differently, but still get the same, the result that I want, which is, yes, let's go ahead and move forward with that. Or, I'm a decision maker. So being able to make decisions, and stand behind the decisions that you make, right? So that goes back to ownership, accountability. And I think I live by that professionally and personally. I live by those. I'm accountable. I take accountability. I'm a decision maker. I make decisions, good, bad, or indifferent,
Yep.
right? And I tell my team that, like, let's make decisions and let's keep moving because we all have a job to do.
Absolutely. Not taking no for an answer, is that something that you feel that you always had that in you, or did that have to take some training to learn? Because I know that can be a challenging thing. You think, okay, I'm going to ask my boss for this. I'm going to ask whoever. You hear no, and you think that's the end of the line. It takes a lot of strength sometimes to come back. So yeah, I'd love to hear
Absolutely.
about that.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, you may have that no, and it may take a year or two before you get the yes, right? The key is, if you believe in what you're asking for and you think that it's going to be successful at the end, it's waiting its time and figuring out, again, other ways to get to that yes, right? So no, it didn't come overnight. It took a long time for me to get to that point. And sometimes I still have to remind myself, okay, a no today does not mean no tomorrow, right? And so what do I need to do in the meantime, in between that space, to get that yes? And so those are the things that I look at. I don't just, okay, let's just go on to the next. No, what do we need to do in between the space of no and yes to get to where we want to be?
So smart. That's great advice. And yeah, so you worked on some pretty major projects like we spoke about. How did that experience managing those large scale infrastructure projects influence your approach to mentoring today?
That's a great question, and I feel like uh, those projects, because they were so large in scale, large in the number of agencies that we had to coordinate with, certainly large in dollar amount. There were some key things that I needed to be successful and to make those projects successful. One is great project management style. And what that means to me is being able to effectively communicate, again, listen, and not only listen for what the mayor and the council and the executive team wanted, out of these projects, but also listen to what the residents wanted, right? Listen to the complaints and listen to also how we wanted our city to grow and what we wanted our city to look like and what that looks like in my project deliverables. Also being able to sometimes being the only woman in the room and the woman that's making the decisions and the woman that is leading this effort around a group of men, entire group of men, being able to be firm, and stand by what my decision is, right? I think that took a lot for me to do, and it took a lot of growth. And so in that, I transitioned that to my mentorship, and, you know, you have to be accountable, but you also have to be confident in your own skin. Like, what are you doing? What are you providing? How are you delivering for your staff, for your employees, for your people, for the residents? What do you want to achieve, and keeping that before you? It's easy to be able to kind of be docile and double down who you are when you're intimidated, walking into a group, a room full of men, and you're the only female in that room, and also that you're leading, that charge. But you also have to quickly understand you're in there for a reason, right? You're in that room for a reason. You got into that room because of what you have and what you bring to the table. And again, I don't always mentor people that are in engineering. I mentor people that have a very vast career and profession. But one thing that still remains the same is you have to know who you are, right? And you have to not double down who you are, but stand firm on who you are and what you believe in, and then take that and add to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you said you talked about confidence, you talked about accountability and knowing who you are.
Absolutely.
Those three things, were those things you felt that you always felt comfortable with, or did you have a journey in developing confidence, for example? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that process for yourself.
Absolutely a journey. I mean, some people do come out the gate, very confident in what they do, even as a newbie. But my transition was different, because again, I received my civil engineering degree in the 90s. That was a time where you didn't see a lot of women in civil engineering, specifically transportation, and definitely not African American women in civil engineering. It was a predominantly white male field. So it took time for me to get to where I am today. And I would say, I'm not sure if you ever heard of imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome is very real, right? Imposter syndrome is very real. And, we struggle with that all the time, both men and women, but the majority of time you see women struggling with imposter syndrome. And so that's that little voice, in your mind telling you, oh, no, you can't do it. Oh, why are they choosing me? Or I don't know if I can deliver this. So, we battle against that as well. And so I certainly did, and sometimes still do. Again, here's my transparency.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still battle with imposter syndrome, but again, because I've been, in this profession for, 30 plus years, I realize that it will come. But the way to battle it is you do,
You do it.
right? You
You
just
move
do it.
forward. You don't
You move forward,
stand back.
you don't stand back, you don't double down, you do it in fear,
It's
right?
uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable, right? It's very uncomfortable. It's like, I don't want to do this. But even when you're saying that, as you're saying that, you're taking that step.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do this. I mean, listen, I've done presentations in front of mayors and councils and, whole residents and, a couple of hundred people. I've done that. And that's not always easy, right? And so when my mentees ask me like, how do you stand in front of the council and how do you stand in front of the mayor? It's like, I realize that they're people too,
Yes. Yeah.
right? I realize that everyone that I stand in front of, and when I open my mouth to say something, they're people too. Also, when you're presenting, you make sure that you know what you're presenting on. You know, you have to feel comfortable in that space, to deliver that message. And 9 times out of 10, you are aware and you do know what you're talking about. So just talk.
Just do it.
You
Yeah. So when you're
know?
wanting to, stay at home with your 3 dogs and a blanket and just avoid what you're saying is, those are the times when there's a chance for growth. You go out there and you grow.
Absolutely. Like I gotta put the blanket down, I
Yeah.
gotta put my cookies in the cakes, and I gotta come out and I gotta, go and do.
Yeah.
And look, every time we do that, we show up, right? And every time we show up, it gets a little bit easier, to do it the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that's why mentorship is so important to me, because I've been there where they are, right? And so as we get older, we learn those pitfalls, and we should be willing to share, with the next generation what those look like.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, and just to go back to the topic of leading, I was curious to ask, how does the mindset differ when you're leading a team versus an individual person?
So when I'm leading my team, it's all about us, right? It's about us. It's about what we do. I'm a leader that I don't like making, even though I'm a decision maker, I don't like making all the decisions. I want my team to make the decisions. So that's buy-in from my team. That's accountability from my team. That's ownership from my team. So everything is about us, even when we fail, right? If we're going to succeed together, we're also going to fail together. So I don't want to be we're pointing fingers at one another. It is about us collectively operating and moving as one, even though we're all individuals and we're a team. When I mentor, it's about that individual, right? I don't tailor my mentorship. There's no template because each individual is different, right? So I may have some that they're very straightforward. They want to pick my brain about a burning question that they have, and they want to get an understanding of what direction they should go in and some answers. And then, they leave for the day and they go and they do. Others I have that like to talk first, before we really get into the whole reason why we're meeting. And I'm okay with that as well, because I understand that they're individuals and they're seeking something, different, each one of them. I mentor both men and women. And so, again, very different, right? Where they're coming from and how they want to be mentored. And so I take that, I don't take that lightly, and I don't try to group it all together. It's like, here's my template for how I mentor. No, what do you need from me? And I always tell my mentees that, we can do this however you want to do it. I'm here for you.
Sounds like your mentees are very lucky to have you as a mentor, considering how much you're listening and how much you
Thank
personalize.
you.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I
awesome.
appreciate that. And again, it comes with, growth. It comes with how I also have mentors. And so how I interact with my mentors and my coach. And so that's about me giving that back to the next generation so they can move forward and then pay it forward.
Absolutely. So, what qualities do you think mentees value most in a mentor? We talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
any key factors that they should consider when choosing the right mentor for them?
Yeah. I definitely feel like they should look for someone that has the same qualities that they have, like moral fabric, some of the things that they are looking for. And that, again, that's an individual thing. I believe, and I've had people say, they love my transparency, or, I'm authentic, or, I take ownership. And again, those are my fabric, my moral fabric things. And so I use those as a way to mentor to my mentees. I also think they shouldn't always look for someone that's inside of their career, or their profession. Look outside the gate, because sometimes looking outside the gate, you'll find exactly what you need. And you'll be surprised at, somebody that may be not going into engineering, but going into data innovation, or, going into IT can be exactly what you need, because they're helping you to think outside the box.
Right. There might be some blind spots that maybe finding someone who's exactly like you is not going to help with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I also feel like just character, integrity. Those are things that you definitely want to make sure. Like if someone said, what do you think about Keisha? I want my mentee to say, wow, she's a woman of integrity. She's a woman of great character. She keeps it real. She doesn't, blow smoke, or give the response that I want to hear. She gives what I need to hear, you know. And that's not always easy too, right? In the digital age, in the age of TikTok and IG and stuff,
It's easy to fall in line.
right, all those things where they can really go and get information from. They really don't have to sit in front of a human anymore, because they can go and get it right on their phones, really. So I count it an honor, because they do come to me, and ask for my guidance, as opposed to going to all those platforms and trying to get it there.
Oh, I
That
see what
says
you're
something,
saying.
right? That's
Absolutely.
simple. Mhm.
Yeah. I came across a blog actually with a great name, The Sugar Scoop,
Ah,
local blog. And there was a great quote in there from you. Do you mind if I just read it?
yeah, absolutely.
It's when women have an outlet, when they have something to gravitate to, it makes them better employees.
Mhm.
Can you talk
Yeah,
about that a little bit?
absolutely. So, and I can't even remember when I did the sugar
Might be
scoop.
a
It was
while
a
back. I dug it up. I'm good
while
at
ago, right?
internet research.
Mhm. So I created back in 2020, I created the Women Empowerment Network for the city of Sugar Land. And I did that because, of course, we were in the midst of a pandemic, and women were taking on all these roles, wearing all these hats. Not that we don't on a regular, but the pandemic heightened it, right? So we became not only teachers and parents, and we became doctors, and we became physicians, and we became physical ed, because we had to give all these activities to our kids to keep them busy. We really became all these things. And so I wanted to create an outlet for women where they felt encouraged and empowered and uplifted, within the organization at that time, so we can have an outlet, right? And so going back to the sugar scoop, I feel like, when we come together, because there's space enough for all of us, right? There's space for everybody to win. There is space for everybody to get what they need. And so we don't have to backbite. We don't have to, grab hold and try to pull one another down. No, we can all rise up together. And I think, us being that empowered woman together just makes us more powerful. It just makes us more great when we do it together as opposed to separated.
Yeah.
So I always tell my mentees, hey, look for a network that you can get involved in, because again, doing it by yourself, you can, but it's so much easier when you do it together.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. And sometimes it's just, an hour here, an hour there, and it's energy for your whole week or for
It's
your whole month even.
absolutely. And I really like, here's some things that give me energy. The sun gives me energy, right? Love being by the sun. Water gives me energy. Even, I love being by water. I say when I retire, I'm going to get my lake house and I'm just going to sit there
Yes.
and drink coffee, and look at the sun and be by the water. But what also gives me energy is seeing women all in a room just thriving and networking and, sharing one another, because, that helps build us up, and it just gives us strength, to get to that next level that we're trying to get to. And that's both professionally and personally.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we do things professionally and we can carry that into our personal lives. Right. Or you don't even think that you're carrying it into your personal life, but then you look up like, oh wow, that's really helping me in this area.
Absolutely. Yeah, talking to you gives me energy. So it's something that I'll say quickly in my career I've realized you have to almost take stock of those things, make a note. What are the things that give you energy? Because if you're not paying attention, your risk is that you're going to burn out in a million different ways.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to know, that's a good point that you just made, because you have to know when burnout is coming, because I feel like we can sense it when it's coming. It's just a matter of, do we take note of it? Do we pay attention to it? And then you have to also know when you're in burnout, right? So you have to know when it's coming, and that's you knowing who you are as a person, right? So you have to know when it's about to come, and if you miss that opportunity, know when you're in it, because that's the time when you really have to take back and you have to go and get poured into. And I always tell my mentees, and I tell my son this too, like, we do a lot of pouring out of, right? We pour into other people. We pour, our knowledge, our wisdom, I'm a strategic thinker. So we're always thinking and, kind of looking big picture. And then as a mother, I'm pouring into my child, and, a parent and a sister, and, all these things. So we always pour into others, but then I always say that, but who's pouring back into us? Right. And so if there's no one pouring back into you, that means you're steady depleting yourself. Burnout is coming, like burnout, not if it comes, like when it comes, burnout is coming. Right. So you have to make sure that when you're pouring out, you also are being poured into.
Yeah. And a lot of us are often great at holding ourselves accountable at work to others, but this is one of those things. It's sometimes hard to hold yourself accountable to yourself to take the time that you need.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And then
mentors, as we've been
if you
talking about.
don't, then what good are you? How are you going to be that great person that you are? You're not, because you're depleted, you know.
Exactly. I'm sure we could do a whole other conversation on that, but on burnout in general and strategies. But just a couple more questions for you. How has mentoring others impacted your own personal and professional growth?
Yeah, and trust me, I'm still growing, in this. I love it when my mentees come back and say, that was really good what you told me. I took that information and I used it, and this is the result of, and I'll go back to imposter syndrome. I too have to say, wow, what I gave them, and I'm just sharing, right? There's no recipe to, there's no, perfect magic, anything to it. I'm just sharing my experiences that I've had over the years and what I believe will help them. And sometimes it's like, wow, the things that I've gone through, the things that I've done, the things that I'm doing can and will help someone else, and so it shapes me in my personal and professional growth because it makes me realize, like, you still have things that you have to do. Like, you still have things and people that you have to reach, that you have to mentor, that you have to help show the way. I still have a team that needs me. And so, I have to be that strategic thinker for them. I have to make sure that they know that I have their, they have my support in the things that they want to do. I always tell my team leaders, hey, make the decision and I'll support you, but if you feel like, oh, I'm not really sure about that decision, let's talk about it, but you make the decision. Don't rely on me to make the decision, and so my son, he's 19 now, he did his first year in college, and I was telling his dad, I said, you know, we're no longer in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah.
We're no longer able to dictate or tell him what to do. Now we can just strongly recommend and be a support system to him as he goes out and makes these decisions on his own. And so that in and of itself, now it's almost like I get an opportunity to mentor him as he steps through life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Mhm.
And just seeing that transition, I'm sure it's relevant to what you do at work too, because these are not your children, right? People that you work with, they're people that are going to make their own decisions about
Absolutely.
what they're going to do. So all you can do is
Yeah.
really influence and encourage and yeah.
Exactly. And now he's a young adult. And so now I can't look at him. I mean, he's still my baby, right? But I can't treat him like that anymore. And so now I have to look at him as a young adult and say, okay, hey, this is a decision that you make. You stand by it, and if that doesn't work, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
absolutely.
Think of something else. Do something else.
Yep. Great. Well, what final piece of advice or any advice that we haven't covered yet would you like to share with the engineers listening to this show?
Yeah. I think as an engineer or any profession, I think it's so important for us to give back. And one of the ways that we give back is through mentorship coaching. I think that's a great opportunity to help young people, young thriving professionals get to where they need to be. And again, if we always feel like we just don't have time to do what we have to do within the 24
Right.
hours we have, right? Like, oh, I need some more time. But what that does is requires us to prioritize. And so what's priority? And for me, definitely being one of the best streets division in the country, that's a priority for me as it relates to my profession. But also seeing young men and women thrive in their careers and get what they need, at least from me, that's important and that's a priority for me. And so I would say to other engineers or any profession out there that's listening, take some time. And if someone comes to you and asks to be a mentor, really consider, mentoring. And it could be someone that's almost a peer level to you, but you have something that they need. And if you have something that they need, give it, because it's not for us to hold all of this knowledge and wisdom, and professional guidance and leadership that we have over the years, that we've gained over the years. It's not for us to hold it to ourselves.
Right. And from everything that you've said, it sounds like it's good for the person. It's good for you as the mentor. It's good for the organization, and as a result, it's good for the community. So it's
Absolutely.
very much aligned. So,
Mhm.
amazing. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm really grateful that we got a chance to speak today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time with you, Rebecca.
Good. Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss upcoming episodes featuring interviews with inspiring women engineers, discussions about industry trends, and so much more. Go to womenandengineeringpodcast.com, where you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, may your engineering endeavors be as remarkable as the women whose stories we're sharing. Stay curious, keep innovating, and engineer a better future.